Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, Mr. Hugo Lafontaine. How are you, Hugo?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We've been working to get this conversation going for quite a few months, so I'm really excited to have you here. You are calling in from snowy Ottawa, and I'm calling in from snowy Calgary. So from a weather report nationally, we're all in the middle of winter in Canada right now. But I really want to set the stage. You are vice president at Schneider Electric. And I think Schneider is one of those names. I think if you're involved in the industrial space at all, you've heard of them, but maybe don't know what Schneider is all about. So I'll give you the floor. Give us a little bit of a set the stage, and let's get into our conversation today, which is going to be more about Canadian manufacturing, technology, robots, all the things that make it interesting.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you very much. So first, Schneider Electric, is a global company, 150,000 employees plus. Headquartered in Paris. I would say we operate with headquarters in about 32 countries, Canada being, a major country for Schneider Electric Canada. We are, I would say, we call ourselves an energy tech company. And in that portfolio, it really merges the energy and the automation, to bring best of what we can bring in the table for the customers. If you think about Schneider Electric Canada and where we are, you can imagine that one house out of two has some sort of, will have one of our technologies in the house. Typically the breakers in your basement, chances are if you go downstairs, Tyler, and you look at your house, you'll notice that you got a Schneider breaker. We've purchased multiple brands and companies along the years. Ones that would be quite known in Canada, for example, would be APC. Remember the UPS that you plugged in your laptop or computer at home? So we've bought that company, and then this also has large UPS for data center, making us one of the largest player in data center world, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then other acquisition we've made, for example, would be Invensys, right? And Invensys and also Monocom are the reason why today we're talking, right? On the industrial automation side, we have quite a lot of installations in Canada. So as a company, we focus on automation, power, energy, sustainability, and Schneider, to close it off, Schneider has been voted off as one of the most sustainable company in the world for the last couple of years. So part of our DNA as a company, everything we do is around sustainability, providing services and products that helps others to do so, but we also live it and use it internally, right? With our hundreds of factories around the world that we have, we aim to measure every single footprint of carbon that we emit. We aim to reduce all of that, and we have very strict goal internally to hit 2025, 2030, 2050 targets with our actions.
I appreciate that. What was the origin of the company? Like how many years? I understand it's headquartered in Paris, 150,000 employees, which is a significant number.
Yeah.
How old is the company? Now it's just my own curiosity.
Yeah, it has survived most of the Great World Wars.
Okay.
So it is almost 200 years old. So it was founded in the 1800s, a long time ago. It was by a French person called Eugene Schneider, based in Paris. And from there, we've grown, right? And in Canada, we're not so much known, but if you went in France and Paris and Grenoble, there's not one person that doesn't know about Schneider, right? It is one of the leading technology company out there.
Interesting. How long have you been on the team, Hugo?
So I've been with Schneider since about 2017. So
Okay.
I would say about 9 years.
Just thinking about a 200-year company, and we talk about today the pace and speed of change of innovation and technology. And of course, there's opportunity and excitement, but a lot of overwhelm. But a company that's been around for 200 years, you couldn't even list on 3 sheets of paper the amount of changes that your organization has been through. So would you say, just as someone coming in, even the last, like as an outsider coming in 2017, if you've only been there the last, 8 years, that's pretty small fraction in terms of the organization. Is that ability to adapt or that need to constantly be moving forward, is that just part of the DNA? You don't get to stay around for 200 years unless you're really good at adapting.
Absolutely. And how many large companies that we know along the years that have disappeared? Only a fraction of large companies survive that long, right? So the reality is if you're the exact same thing in the exact same way in your doing and your culture that you were 10, 20, 30, 100 years ago, you're probably not there anymore, right? That's just the reality. And you look at even Schneider, we went from being a steel manufacturing to eventually renaming ourselves to Schneider Electric to say we're in the electrical business in the 90s. So that's not that long ago, right? And today, in the last 20 years, All of our culture shift are around agility, digitalization. How do we embrace software? We've acquired software companies, right? Because we know that the name of the game is going to be around hardware, which are always going to be needed, but you need that digital layer. You need that digital footprint and that skill set and the culture to go along it, right? But if you don't have the culture aligned with digital adoption and change management, it's going to be very difficult. So in Schneider, we live it every day, right? Because we're selling it, we're making it. But imagine internally if you came and you noticed there was no computers, there was no AI, there was no utilization of
there was fax machines
about, right?
Yeah,
exactly, right. Then you'd be doubting that there's something's not quite right.
How I really appreciate how much you focused on, for every stitch of carbon we emit, we focus on reduction. How much is that just part of that credibility? It sounds like it's a non-negotiable, like what you just said. Our culture, we already think this way. And yes, when we bring that to our clients, I imagine that has to be a huge part of the sales process of being able to open the kimono, if you will, and say, look, we're also practicing what we preach. And I know that sounds so obvious, but it's not always true, right?
Yeah, no, good comment. So part of the DNA, right? When we go and we try to explain that, we're going to go through digital transformation. The first comment will be, okay, but why? Why do I do that? Well, let me tell you about why we did it, right? Why we went through this and the benefit. There's a strong belief in many companies that I notice that I meet that, sustainability is a nice of, and personally they embrace it, but then they don't see the correlation between being profitable, right, and being sustainable short term. And we prove it as a company that we've been quite profitable. We've been quite driven around growth, and yet we've been able to embrace sustainability. And yes, there is a resource requirements, there is a focus requirement, but by doing all that at the same time, on making sure you grow, making sure you're profitable, and being sustainable, they're not mutually exclusive. They actually can work quite well together.
Is the challenge there often the time that it takes? Is it the addiction of, I want to make a change, I want to invest now, but see results now? Or do you work with organizations, 200 years, you're playing arguably an infinite game, not a finite game, but a lot of organizations, and there's lots of things written on this, we get caught into short-term cycles, quarterly results. When you work with an organization, do you find the ones that succeed versus the ones that, I'm not going to say fail, but struggle? Is it the ability to take a bit of a longer term vision on some of these implementations? And we'll get into the different technologies, but I love the mindset. It all starts with a mindset before you ever worry about a piece of hardware or software.
Yes. And so first, Schneider is a public company. So we live quarter per quarter.
Yes, we do.
Year.
Okay. That's good to comment that.
And then, so that's where we live, right? So this is to give hope to everybody out there that it's not just because that you have the ability to do, to leverage, let's say, private equity or a family-owned company where you can do what you want over time. There's really an ability to balance short-term results, medium-term, and long-term. I think it really stems from culture, stems from leadership. We were lucky as a company that we did have a CEO for a long term, right, in our company. So the ability to negotiate between shareholder expectations and also having the shareholders, the investors align with a long-term vision. Because, at the end of the day, is you need people to align on the journey, right? So, this is what we're doing today to make sure everybody's happy, but this is where we're going tomorrow. And that vision, that alignment is really where you differentiate yourself. And I think when I meet with companies, a lot of them have purpose, they have visions and missions, and they've read that book around, infinity versus, infinity
Simon
mindset.
Sinek book that we've all read, absolutely.
Book, by the way. So, and I'm not sponsored by him by any means. And then that's where I really I was going to say struggle. I do struggle when I see companies that are stuck in this reactive mode, right? And especially today, imagine today, right? The world changed earlier this year, right? Our friends became a bit less friendly.
Yes, they did.
Security, safety, assurance that our products are being built in the country and being exported to our, out down south. I'm not sure anymore. So people that were in companies that were investing in certain technologies, a lot of them paused and said, you know what, my focus right now is surviving. My focus is realigning the vision of my company to make sure that I can have a plan B when my volume reduces because, there's a 25% tariff or there's a blockage or who knows what could happen, right? And what I find frustrating in all that is, you go through the cycle of saying, I'm going to pause on long-term vision and investment on long-term, and I'm going to pivot. And the pivot is typically more around managing, the culture, the unease that you have with your staff. You're trying to find new people to buy your things, and yet it's going to sound counterintuitive, but if you're not investing in addressing, I'd say, one very specific topic, which is productivity. Who's going to buy your product when it's 20% more expensive? US is right now, because there's this North American, the product is built for America. Products coming from Europe or Asia, they're not coming with UL rating. There's all sorts of natural barriers that allows us in North America to have an environment where our products are sometimes better built, but also, I would say, rated in a way that we protect our market. That's just the reality. Okay, so if you want to go and export somewhere else, you want to build, and go and sell in China, Europe, Africa, you name it. And yet you don't have the productivity to have the cost level, where are you going to go? So you're trying to go somewhere, you don't have the price point, let's say, to go there, and yet you're not investing in the productivity you need to get that price point. So I think that's one thing we're failing as a country sometimes, is we're not proactive enough and pushing hard enough to get that level of productivity.
I appreciate how you broke that down, because often in the news cycle, there's like, reduce productivity in Canada. It's not always communicated what that means or what the impact is. Not only does that impede, we have an easy customer, we've had an easy customer that became more of a challenging customer. You don't just pivot and jump to another global customer base. You still need that productivity. Like, efficiency still matters no matter where, and almost more so when you take what maybe, I don't want to say it took for granted, but we had a baked in customer with some moats around it, the way you explained it, like certain regulatory, certain manufacturing standards that kept us kind of protected. That goes away. Whoa, the need to be globally competitive gets pretty fierce pretty quick.
Yes. And you know what, there's a few things to be said about productivity, right? And so I'll make a few comments because I think it's very important. So if you think about productivity, right, because people have different notion of what that is, and in my opinion, and then for many people in my domain, it's really, how many goods or how much money can you generate per hour of men work or female work, right? It's essentially a person working, and imagine Canada, being pretty on par with the US in 1960. But would you believe it? We were creeping up slowly as increasing our productivity compared to the US until 2000. For 40 years, we enjoyed this, this slight dissociation and an increase versus the US. And then 2001 happens, and then the US kind of bumps up, and then we just keep flatlining, right? And then the US keeps going up, and then COVID happens. And then COVID, US, right after COVID, they accelerate, and we decelerate. We're actually about 10 quarters in of de-productivity in the country, where actually productivity is nosediving. That's huge, right? That's 3 years of us producing less per man hour than we used to. And compared to the US, which are accelerating, the gap is increasing. So, and the US right now was kind of leading, right? I would say productivity around the world. So we're comparing ourselves to a flagship, right? And then we can talk about, China and then robots and what's kind of happening there. But the reality is, Schneider is seeing it, because we have also our plants in Canada, our plants in US, and we can see the culture difference a bit, right? And how the suppliers who buy from in the country here have not adopted automation as much as other suppliers who work in the US, right? So we can see direct correlation between cost of goods, between supply chain resiliency, and everything else. So here we are today, and we look at the US and we see that they're producing more with the same amount of people. And the main reason is the massive investment that
in tech,
countries,
automation,
sectors, and so are doing with technology. And technology can be manual robots. It could be AI. It could be digital tools, digital twinning. It could be modernization with data. You name it, right? There's a lot of different things that can go in there. But the reality is Canada is not going in the right direction. So how do we as a country, and that's across, I've seen Alberta, British Columbia, in Quebec, Ontario, it's really the same, right? There's something preventing us, especially I'd say the whole critical mass of PMEs or SMEs, especially small to medium enterprises. That layer is just not adopting technology in the way we need to.
What's your perspective as someone who consults with these companies, and what is the cultural biases that are keeping us? Is it a little bit of fear? Is it reluctance? Is it are we is it the wait and see? I've heard sometimes in Canada there's a big lineup to be second. We all want to see someone else try it first, and we want to go. Where in the US, I've heard from companies they're like, no, if someone thinks they can get a competitive advantage from buying your product, they want to be first because they see that as a leg up. Where in Canada, I've heard, I'm generalizing, of course, it's sometimes seen as a risk, not a risk worth the reward. Where the US, it's, oh, I can beat somebody with this tech, I'm doing it. Where Canada's like, whoa, yeah, sounds great. You get the Canadian yes. Where, yeah, get back to me in 6 months. Yeah, okay, but no. Any thoughts on that? I know we're getting into the nuance of kind of how you see the world, but having these conversations and having 32 offices globally or 32 head offices, that's a cool perspective that you get as an organization as well, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. And when you see the different cultures and the different challenges, right? And the economy that go up and down, and the countries that were the flagship that are now struggling, like Germany, for example, right now, we think of them as the manufacturing automation stronghold. And right now they're struggling, right? They were doing lots of cars that were going to Asia, and now Asia is making their own cars and have their own productivity abilities. So
and I've heard that tied directly to low investment in automation and technology in the last 10 years. They lagged behind. They've now admitted it, but you've got a 10-year, not even a 10-year, a reverse head start. You're 10 years. And it was directly because of lack of investment. I was just reading something about that recently. Germany is still being kind of known as that leader, but they're not. They've fallen out of that space.
They've fallen behind, right? They sat on a comfort level, not challenging status quo, right? And then that's exactly where I was leading to. So good on you for bringing it up. You look at the different cultures. You got the ones that are always challenging status quo. Think about Toyota, right? Toyota, the continuous improvement. Yeah. It's great, but it can be better. How do we break it? How do we fix it? How do we make it better? In US, it was more like it works super well. It's proven. Don't break it. And Canada, can you double check it's really okay before we do anything to it? Can you make sure that people have tested it, right? And I'm being funny about this a bit, but I see it every day. I go see customers and they're like, okay, who's tried this? Who's using it? Yes, I think this looks amazing, but you know what? Come back to me in 2 years when this has been in the market for a while. I don't want to be the one being an early adopter and getting burnt and going through the growing pains, right? And again, it's generalization. Some are like jumping in it, right? And I've seen wonderful SMEs that actually have cobots like already like, grabbing boards, bolting it with another cobot. And I'm like, wow, I see big companies not doing that. And you're a smaller outfit that you invested here. He's like, yeah, I believe in the future. I believe that if we don't put some more cobots in our plants, in 5 years when I go to hire people and there's none because nobody wants to go on a plant right now in that region, they're what do? Well, you have to move your plant, or you've figured out how to optimize, right? That's
and at that point, you're not 5 years behind. You're actually 10 because you have to make up for those 5 that you lost on top of the 5 you've already lost. It amplifies at that point, right? Interesting. I do like what you said about, the SME, but like where culture matters. It's not just big companies, big budgets, an SME with the right belief structure and the right, a leader or a founder or a board or a group of investors that we believe in the future and we're willing to maybe deal with a little bit of short-term discomfort because we know that the price we will pay for not doing that is big discomfort 3 to 5 years. But humans, we're notoriously bad at looking to the future sometimes. Not all of us, but sometimes, because we look to the near term. So when you're looking at what's happening in that space, first of all, can you define cobots? Because I think we all understand what it means, but I do appreciate a proper technical definition versus robots, because it's a great term that doesn't get floated around.
So So robots can be anything, right? It's a device that is automized and moves, and then they have different level of, I would say, intelligence, right? So there's a wire plug into it, and then it makes rotations or elevations, and then you have the ones that do have a computer board in it, allows them to be independent of movement and decision making with power supply in it, and then you have the ones that have AI augmented abilities, right, where they can start, adapting to a situation. And for example, a car, right? A self-driven car is a perfect example, right? Where a lot of data is coming into it while it's driving, and it modifies driving. It will stop, it'll turn, it'll do everything like that, right? So a cobot is part of that family. A collaborative robot, essentially what it stands for, right? So it's a robot. It basically looks like an arm, typically. And that arm is bolted to the ground if it's a large one, or it could be on a stand on a table, right, for the smaller application. And it's designed with a bunch of cameras, sensors, and it's limited in speed also to prevent injury to humans and being able to work in close proximity to humans. So that's what a cobot is. And then if you start using big cobots and you have them move at a fast pace, right, to start moving faster than it is safe, then they're still called cobots, but then they're running an application where they're not meant to be near any humans, right? So, and you see the big arms that are moving things on a car or lifting cars, these are large robots, right? But they look exactly the same as a cobot, just they're much bigger and faster, and you can imagine the kind of damage that could do. Right?
What kind of, so give me an application where a basic robot application would work, but then by going up to a cobot type application would work in, is it always about manufacturing? Is it a cobot would be more in a process that has more variability, where a robot would be in a much more, the traditional assembly line, robot puts bolt in hole, versus cobot goes, where's the hole? I need a hole. There's no hole here. What's going on? Is it just sheer more complexity of the task required?
So, yeah, I think obviously the line is fine, right? Between, especially if they look exactly the same, it's more of an application thing. So the way they're designed, right? So imagine a cobot is something that you can quickly take off out of the box. It's assembled, put together. Let's imagine it's a small one, right? One the size of your screen on your computer, your desktop computer. So this cobot is designed to move something that's about 5 kilograms, right? So let's say 10 pounds. And then, so you take it out of the box, you make sure it's powered. You can take the arm, move it, and you're teaching it the motion you're looking for. Right? So it's not just coding. You can physically move it, and it's learning the motion range. And then you can say start, and then it will be for typically what I would call a high repetitive motion. Right? Grab a box of toothpaste, and then move it to a box, right? And then you grab the toothpaste, you put it in the box, and then when the box is full, the box goes away, and then it does the next box, right? Highly repetitive, you quickly taught it what it was doing, low speed, no risk, you name it. That would be a perfect example. Okay. So when you used to, especially in the manufacturing world, and again, you can imagine you could buy one for home, right? And you teach it how to do something on your counter.
I'm already thinking of my cooking assistant, Hugo. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. It's in my kitchen, and it's stirring, right? For me, and it's doing things for me. That's the sous chef cobot.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what it is, right? So what's happening today is, first of all, they're getting bigger and more complex in the things you can teach them, and the rotation and the angles and all that, right? So imagine now that what you used to go and buy a machine from a manufacturer, right? So imagine that you're a manufacturer and you've designed something that receives toothpaste on a conveyor belt, and then that machine was actually putting the little box that goes in the toothpaste, and sealing the box. And after that, it kept going, and a human would grab the box and put it in another box and then close the box and ship it out to the pallet, and it would, right? Where now what's happening, this machine that used to just grab the toothpaste, put a little box on it, is now extending its range of operation, where at the end of the belt, it grabs with a cobot, it will grab the box and move it to another line, right? So it's kind of this transition period. So most machines now, we're starting to see manufacturers that are building these machines to add cobots at the end, right? It's like a package deal now. Like,
I see.
Why would you buy a machine and not have the cobot at the end that is going to replace the highly repetitive function you had for workers that you're having a hard time finding these days?
Yeah. Oh, that okay. So I'm curious, and I guess it's going to be so variable. And if I think about the investment that I need to make for that, is the barrier often an organization being more like, oh, we're not sure, we want to wait and see? Or like, where does that balance out between the culture of like, let's do it, it's exciting, to the cost and the payback cycle? Because I know that's going to be really variable depending on the application. But is it a cost barrier that's holding, organizations or manufacturing companies, we'll just pick on Canada, back from it? Or is it a combination of it's kind of new and I'm not sure, and I don't know if I want to invest the money? How do those scales balance out? And there might be other aspects of the scale that I'm not bringing into consideration.
Yeah, I would bring a couple more. First, imagine 100% cost, right? So
okay,
a 5 kilogram one, that's not that bad. But then you start going in the 50 kilogram, 25 kilogram ones. They're big things, right? And the cost, it's basically you've added let's say 20, 30, 40% cost to your machine. Let's say, right? So that's one. Two, it's not in our culture to have things replace humans that way, right? Like it's just that comfort level of saying, hey, I just replaced a worker. Like, what does that mean? I'm like, you're not replacing a worker. Like, yes, you are today, but tomorrow you're basically positioning the thing that's going to be doing the work because you don't have a worker, right? And then the third one, I would say there's a fear of like the maintenance. The what does it mean? Like, who's used it? Who's is it proven? Why am I the only one doing this in the region? Like, there's this kind of barrier that's happening.
Yeah, that's very
I would
real.
say, those are kind of the example I would have, right? As a quick barrier. And then after that, there's also this internally, that you have a workforce, right? Especially if you have a strong blue collar workforce. There is a bit of push, right, against automation that way, where the workers are seeing that as a kind of not the enemy, but it creates uneasiness. Like, what you guys, what is upper management doing here? Why are they adding these things? Should I fear for my job? And then some companies don't want to deal with that cultural, right? So that internal culture is aligned with adoption of technology, right? That's a big piece.
Do you see organizations, is this an opportunity for reskilling, retooling, upskilling, the repetitive task job, which I would argue most people don't find abundantly rewarding? And I'm being a generalist. I would not find that rewarding. I'm going to put it that way. Other people, I don't want to take away from what they enjoy or they're not. Are these individuals, because the world, Schneider's been around for 200 years. Careers, professions, disciplines have changed, and the manufacturing has evolved and the world has changed. And it seems to be happening quickly, but this is not a new phenomenon in industry. We used to do things very manually, then we added assembly lines. Like, technology has been augmenting. Is it the speed right now that's even making this a bit more scary? Or is that there's a big barrier to go from someone placing a box of toothpaste to someone being able to repair and work on a cobot? Like, is it the gap? And again, I'm trying to weigh these scales of balance here, but I know there's many variables. We've always had to change. Is it the speed, or is it that the change is so big we can't even see ourselves in it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I asked the same question, right? And I really tried to figure out why, because let's talk about industry, right? Just some context here. So, we're Industry 4.0, turning the page around Industry 5.0, right? If you've heard the buzzword. There used to be Industry 1.0, right? Steam came over, right? And after Steam, we invented electricity. And then after that, Industry 3, that's when automation started happening, right? Where you had PLCs, and then you had control logic, kind of optimizing like some robot motion, like especially in the automotive. We all remember those big robots that started appearing, putting a door on the car and all that. So these things have happened, forever, and they've been big changes. And I'm sure there was a lot of noise then. I think there was a lot less social media amplifying the noise.
Yes,
there was a lot less visibility on the fear, the fear mongering, the impact on some skills, So I think that's one. But I think today, though, the difference is change is coming from everywhere. And I think the combination of AI and robot, and now having self-driving cars, and now seeing these video clips of humanoid-looking robots walking around a factory, Having these factory in China that have no lights, no, there's an operator for the entire factory and there's no lights, right? There's no point of having lights. These are robots that don't need any, all that coming together. Then you're like, okay, man, like what is going on there, right? And I think having fear towards robot or automation, okay. I mean, I am a lot more concerned right now. Like, am I going to have a job in 20 years? Is my kid going to have a job being a lawyer or a doctor? Or like, I think everything's in question today, right? So I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to that's very specific question around do we need a robot or not? I think absolutely we do. The question is, what do we do with our time when the robot is doing 90% of the work in the factory, right? Where do I go? Where do I do? How do I make money, right? But this is a long philosophical discussion.
It's a much bigger conversation, Hugo, which I do appreciate. So just to be clear, and I appreciate like 1.0 was steam, 2.0 was electric, 3.0 was automation. I love how clear, and I never want to leave any assumptions. What's 4.0 and what's 5.0 in terms of just so the audience is clear what we're talking about?
4.0 is really the big data aspect.
Data.
The layers of
the data is the new
solutions.
oil headlines that we saw on Harvard Business Review for a few years there. About 8 years ago.
Yeah, and that's 4, right? Adoption of cloud solution, digital, all that. And I say 5 is really kind of merging the human factor, optimizing the ecosystem around human interaction, collaborative robots, like a lot more of it, right? And streamlining between humans and the machine. That's your 5, right? So, but most companies in Canada are still working on the 3, right? And some are adopting technologies around Industry 4. Big challenge for 4, by the way, is really around data, right? And that's just a recurring theme. And if ever you ask me, like, what is the challenge of digital transformation? There's 3 aspects, right? There's the technology adoption, there's technology, the way you implement technologies, right? So, too many proof of concept, disjointed approach, the wrong technologies, you name it, right? There's a cultural problem. So you don't have the right culture in your company to adopt the technology. It could be the way you reward people. It could be the skill set you have of people that are responsible to manage the servers, the communication, the cybersecurity, you name it. And then the third piece is the process. So, and that goes back to your question around why aren't people adopting the robots more or the cobots? A lot of the challenge too is you get this cobot, but you're like, it's not going to work with my process. The way that we have the sheet metal coming in and we're bending it, there's no way of having a robot take that. And so, but that's your process. How you set up your operations, how you're having your product flow, how you've got people doing one thing here and you got an automation arm doing something else. That whole process. Well, technology is not going to come and fix your process. You got to come in and be strategic on the process, the placement. You got to design it. And then if you got the right culture, the right process, the right technology, then you start having harmony, right? Then you start having that jive that's going to allow you to adopt a lot more, increase, and then go 4.0, 5.0, and who knows, right?
I know this is not directly, I don't want to imply that manufacturing is chaos, but I had an expert on recently talking about AI, and he said the first thing, you can't automate chaos. You have to be really clear on your flow and how you work and what is actually the best way to do something. Don't bring in technology to solve a process that isn't efficient or is not clear or that's kind of messy. And a lot of small businesses think the technology will solve the chaos. But no, you got to sort out the chaos and then find the right technology to work with that. I thought it was a nice way to frame it up.
It is for sure. I'm aligned. I don't know who that is, but he's right. Or she's right.
He was he in this case. So having the privilege of looking around the world, and we talked about Germany a little bit, and I've been reading a few articles about like Germany's kind of now paying the price for their last 10 years of just, we'll say lack of investment. Is Canada on that same journey? And, you know, it sounds like we are, maybe not as vocal, or I've heard it's talked about so pointedly with Germany, but the Canadian productivity challenge is real. When you look at other countries, is it some of the Asian countries? You talked about Toyota, you talked about China. Where do you look for inspiration of where Canada can go, okay, I see a country that's maybe a couple of years ahead of us. What can we learn from? I'm always trying to learn from other people that are doing it better. So what do you guys see as an organization? And then how do we bring that home to Canada?
Yes. So for sure, there's countries where I've seen, the pace of adoption. And let's talk about China, for example, right? Okay. And then after that, we can talk about South Korea. I think let's talk about South Korea first. So South Korea, I think, really a lot of technology is coming out of it, right? Adoption is part of their DNA. Take a gamble, try it, put it in your factory. Think about Taiwan, for example, with very specific abilities to design and optimize like chips in a way that like in the world, like if Taiwan closed their door and they say we don't make those anymore, we're in trouble, right?
The whole world basically tips over. Yeah, I've read some of those things.
Yeah, it's a game changer. So those I look at, I'm like, okay, they were able to be specific on one thing and do it like super, super well, right? And then I go to China, where where they were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And you look at today, right? And there's not a day where they don't challenge that score and push with a clear vision. The way they get there and the values and everything else, that's their own choice.
That's a different conversation for a different podcast. I agree.
Yeah. But they're going, they know where they're going, and then they're using automation as not a nice of, but it is a requirement to get there. There's no other way. There's no other way we're going to be able to have the level of productivity, the level of cost control, quality control, because we all know that, for example, many years ago, if you bought a Chinese product, you knew that you're transferring cost to resiliency, quality, and so on, right? Your product was probably going to fail at a certain point faster than other countries. Today, the price point is quite good. The quality is quite good. Why? They've got a vision and they're using automation for it, right? So those are countries where, I look at these pieces and I'm like, wow, this is something Canada needs to push for, right? We need to do it in our Canadian way, right? Respective to human rights and everything else that you can imagine. But the same way, we got to push the discomfort zone, right? So I look at these countries, I take the things I admire about them, and I want to put that in Canada. I want to be like, okay, you know what? This is how we do it in Canada. This is our Canadian way of doing our future mapping of the technology adoption required for us to be a country that in 20 years from now, we're not going to be going like that.
We need to stop the descent, Hugo. We need to pull the plane out of the dive. Yeah, we do.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's what it wakes me up at night, right? I wake up at night and I'm like, man, first, just because I think as a proud Canadian, I think it's a shame because we know, the things we did and, with Arrow, we used to be a jet.
There are some very solid stories. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
That we led with, right? And we were like, the Canadian arm in space. And like, we got brains, we got innovation, we've got great culture. But now we've kind of sat a bit, on our rear. And now reality is, and the world is shifting. It's faster than ever shifted, right? Things are like, China for China, US for US, Europe is Europe.
Yes.
So
bit of a mixed
Canada
bag.
needs to step up, right? Canada. Yeah. But Canada needs to step up and be okay. Like we've got everything we need. And we're super stable. Like we're safe. Like we know every dollar we invest in our economy, like it's pretty efficient compared to many entities in the world, right? Where we can invest and get an output that correlates to that investment.
It must be an interesting conversation. And, for yourself, like you said, most organizations, there's a Schneider product somewhere in the, so you have a degree of trust. You've been around for a long period of time. So when you are brought in, when Hugo shows up to have the conversation, how much is that conversation, the balance between what new technology is available and like, let's get into the details and kind of, part of the switch might kind of geek out on the tech. But there's also that conversation around investment, productivity, risk taking, and what is a perceived risk, which is what's a real risk. How much is your role as an organization to guide both aspects? Of course, you have to have the bleeding edge technology that's been tested, proven, and used in your own manufacturing facilities. But you've also got to be a little bit of a industrial psychologist to help this organization move forward. Like, how do you balance those two aspects of that conversation, which I'm assuming are going on almost in parallel all the time?
Yeah, I like the term. It's an industrial psychologist. Yes. Well, again, right? When you go into a customer, right, and then you meet with them, depending on who you meet, the discussion is day and night, right?
Yeah.
Depending on their scope of mind, their goals, their role, you name it, right? And I would say for sure, we got some of these discussions that are like super technical, right? Okay, like your technology, where is it used, case study, outcome, correlate the usage for persona. Like it becomes very, very canned. But then quickly enough, it starts being about, okay, well, what are you seeing out there? Like, how can we be better? What are you guys doing with your factories? And then we have, like, for example, like a Lighthouse factory in the US and a couple in the world, where like every single day we automate more and more and more, right? And we use that and we document it, and we bring customers and we bring politicians, and we're like, come and see this. Like, this is what you should be fighting every day to become. And not to brag, because I mean, we've got only a couple of factories at that level, because you can imagine it's a journey. It's not get it all done.
Hugo, we all need role models. We all need role models. It's very important.
Yeah, no, exactly, right. I think, and so it's actually a program. If ever you want to go and Google it, it's called the Lighthouse. It's from the Forum of World Organization, and it's got a standard where, you create a factory, you document it, you apply, you get certified, and then it's only like, I don't know, 100 of those around the world. And then, you start showing up there, and there's robots moving the products on the floor instead of forklift. Everything's RFID. There's digital twinning happening. There's screens. There's, like, you name it, right? It's not perfect. I mean, there's still places where there's humans doing a lot of work, and you're still doing some things that are not fully optimized yet. But a lot of it is a journey. Day one, we put RFID system. Day two, we put cobots. Day three, we did this. But it took 10 years. Yeah. So baby steps, clear vision of where you're going. And then those kind of discussion I have with customers, right? Like, where do you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years? Yeah. And the ones that say, I just want to do exactly what I'm doing the way I'm doing it and hopefully survive, I'm like, well, good luck. And then there's the ones that are like, what, we want to be the best in class in level of employee happiness, and have the best product, and then you're like, okay, well, we're going to have to choose. But at least they have a couple of very clear pillars, right? And when you aim to make sure people are happy, combined with best product in class, and combined with a vision around adoption of technology, I mean, that the chances are in 200 years from now, you have a chance. So I guarantee you, if you don't do these things right now, in 200 years, I'll be very surprised to see you there.
Is there I think about sometimes in our industry and marketing, the old joke, and I think it's in any project business, you can have it good, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap. It's hard to have all three. It's a joke that's been around for years. I think a lot of industries use it. In your conversations, is you can have it automated, you can be profitable, you can be short-term. Like, is there a bit of a triangle of, like, you made a comment just there that I heard you say, like, there's a bunch of things you kind of have to choose. Like, here's my 5-year vision, but I'm going to pick which ones I do first, which ones I do second. What are is there a trade-off pyramid, or is there a conversation that's like, yes, we can have all those things eventually, but we have to pick one or two to start with?
Yeah, well, I mean, and we actually do digital transformation consulting, right? And we go in, we're like, okay, let's talk about what you need. But I think and then it really, I say choose. Because the ones that try to do everything at the same time, it's not going to work, right?
That's just a bad plan in general, I agree, from a leadership perspective.
So yeah, like, I mean, you throw everything at it, and then let's see what sticks, right? So
nothing works, but then you don't know what to fix and what to blame it. That's just a bad project.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, basically everybody's going to basically say it doesn't work. We wasted our time. We're not doing it again, right?
And they're going to blame the other guy, the other tech, the other company. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why. So that's another subject. So I'll keep out your answer. So
thank you.
So I think the balance really is it's like, first vision. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Okay. Then it's basically, okay. Let's build a roadmap of the things that you need to focus on. One, and fundamental, is you need to have a clear plan around your data. Right? It's a must.
It always comes back to the data.
There's no questions there. I mean, if you got nothing automized, you still should have a plan around what you want to do with your data. How is it going to be structured? Who are you going to allow to come in with technology here? What they need to be, like, open, this, cybersecurity. Like, imagine all these systems now that are not really cybersecure. Nobody's hacking it because it's too small. The door's not open. But let's just say that you need to make sure that you manage your data, your security. That should be a fundamental requirement. Then you start talking about, okay, well, what do we want to start with? Do we start with floor optimization, ERP platform and data flow, supply chain management? Like, these are all the buckets that are part of the equation. And then you start focusing on them, right? You can have some that are in parallel, you can have some that are in serial approach, but that's a detail. I think it's just fundamental is where you want to go, fix your data, be tough on those expectations with the technology you bring in, and after that, start targeting function after function, process after process, and then don't never stop. Keep going. Ongoing continuous improvement for me is part of the DNA of that roadmap.
But more importantly, what's the long-term vision, and then what's the incremental steps to get there? But I like what you said. Like, where's your data? Is your security up? Like, those are kind of the table stakes to even show up to play the game.
Yeah, for sure. It's like building your house, right? And trying to figure what color you want in your paint, and you haven't put the windows in the door yet, right? I'm like,
that's so funny. I'm building a house right now, and we're down to the kitchen cabinets right now. But this decision was way harder than the foundation. That was a big decision that got made, and then it was made and it was done. But I had to make that before I ever talked about what kitchen cabinets I was going to put in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess we're at this phase of the decision-making process, knowing that at the end there's a vision of a house. But you're right. Digging the hole was step one. Or even knowing where to dig. I guess even knowing where to dig. Something I've been hearing about a little bit lately, and maybe it's in a different world than you guys live in, but I have some friends that work in the venture capital space, kind of early stage seed round. And they said in the last kind of almost 6 months, hardware has become sexy again, because the moat around software has compressed so much because of AI and the speed at which, no matter what software you wrote today, a kid in his basement can write similar software tomorrow. That's exaggerated. But they said now it's the software enabled hardware, the hardware that needs the software to operate, the camera. They do a lot of stuff in the ag space. So they were talking a lot about farm equipment, which is very much like your world. There's physical products in the physical world that are now integrated with technology. As Schneider, when you're looking at innovation and bringing new products to market and bringing something new to your customers, I'm assuming it's always been a balance of the hardware software mix. Are you seeing that, or is that something that's kind of got on your radar? I thought it was an interesting insight that kind of made, one of those insights that makes sense when you hear it. You're like, oh, if the software moat has compressed, then obviously hardware starts to become, I'm using my word, sexy again, when a lot of times early stage investments steered away from hardware because it was expensive and it took a long time and it was scary. So they went to software, but now that moat has dried up.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair comment. I think, as a big manufacturer, it's a balancing act, right? So we have a lot of hardware products. And then, to be honest, I got some that are 50-year-old design that are best sellers in some areas, right? Like,
because
that's
they
just
work.
the reality.
Yeah.
And they work, they're proven. Nobody wants to design and build those things anymore because it's such a niche market. Your brand market share's there. So, but we're very happy with those, and we're going to keep those, and we're going to make sure they're available for the customers that need them. We went all out with software because we know that the way you optimize and accelerate is really digital.
Yeah.
The problem you have many times is you go into a customer base and they're like, oh, I want software. And then where's your data? And then we're like, well, you have no data because you have no digital hardware. Yeah. Because digital hardware is kind of the key to generating data. You need that connectivity. You need that product that's going to be able to provide value upstream, right? With the digital play, the apps, the software, the cloud, the cybersecurity tools, you name it, right? So I think if you start focusing only on one and forget the others, you're going to wake up one day saying like, well, all this hardware, these IoT devices are limited, and they're not evolved enough to provide what we need for the new era of AI and so on. On top of it, you're going to wake up with a lot of hardware that is also risky. I've mentioned cybersecurity. They're not compliant. They don't have the embedded cybersecurity requirement, right. Which is like, for example, at Schneider, everything we design, if it's connectable, it goes to cybersecurity, our division. And if it doesn't get the stamp, we don't build, we don't ship it, we don't sell it. It's just simple as that, right? It needs to be a requirement. And so I think as an investor, if you got dollars, you gotta balance it, right? I mean, hardware is a requirement. Software is a risk right now because adding software and code now, I mean, the machine does it better than a lot of coders right now, right? So how you quantify that dollar you're going to invest in something that's real, that can't be just copied with no IP, right? The value in 2 days, right? So that's the risk. I think it's not, do we need software? Is it not sexy? I think it's more about the risk of software and the real IP, because it's gonna, you can do this now with AI and write a code in a second, right?
But if you don't have especially in your world, the integration into the hardware, which is not only doing the task, but compiling the data of the efficiency of the time. So would IoT sit between 4.0 and 5.0 in terms of industry, or is it, because all of a sudden now, there was a lot of talk about it a couple of years ago, and it seems to have just kind of settled out a little bit. But as I'm looking at what I wrote, 1.0, 2.0, it feels like it sits in between 4 and 5, or am I drawing a weird conclusion?
Three. I would say 3 and 4.
Okay, so even sooner, before.
Yeah.
Because without the IoT, you don't get the data.
If you're thinking about IoT device, right? So IT and then operational technology, right? IoT, right? So that's really what it is. So think about your the thermostat you bought for your home, right? That came with connectivity to a cloud, right? So these have been here for 20 years, right? So this is really where we start pushing towards 4.0, where all these IoT devices are connectable. They got a lot of data. So that's really the 4.0 era.
But it was interesting because that thermostat I could manually do it. Now I can ask AI to optimize the way my house heats and cools based on my activity because of all the data, and it can basically scan that data and draw conclusions way faster than me going, I wake up at 6 and I leave at 8, so set it to, it was kind of dumb IoT in a way, and now it's become so much more. The high performance layer is the ability to now interpret all that data, do something with it.
Yeah. And that's your data centers.
And that was a lot of companies playing the long game, putting thermostats in your house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And now they know exactly when you get up, what you're doing, how you do. Anyways, we can talk about that privacy. 100%. But it's really, I think the good news is a lot of the hardware we have today is not the limiting feature to do more with AI, to do more optimization, right? We've got a good base. Do we have enough of it? Is there a lot of factories that have zero IoT? Yes. A lot of factories still have, people on the chair that move manually, and there's no sensors monitoring how many of this you're producing an hour. There's no output going up to monitor productivity versus last year. All these data, we need that. That's just the only way of doing it, right? If you don't have that data, how are you going to be able to optimize?
Mm-hmm. So you're just reminding me of I was in Italy back in 2017, and I did a tour. We called it our Italian horsepower tour, and we went to Ducati, and we went to Ferrari, and went to Lamborghini. But when we went to Ducati, we got to go inside the engine manufacturing aspect of it. And Ducati in the past, was the joke. It'll pass anything except a gas station or a garage because it always needed to be repaired. It was always breaking down. It's a beautiful motorcycle, but it was not reliable. And as on the tour, they walked us through on how they used technology to fix that problem by simply putting every time someone touched a wrench to a bolt, they scanned a code. So everybody knew which bolt got tightened by which wrench when, and they were able to, in a very short period of time, start tracking back all of their failures. And they said within a year to 2 years, they basically took what was an unreliable engine problem and made it reliable just by taking and being deliberate with the data. And in 2017, it felt kind of mind-blowing a little bit, but to hear it now, it feels like table stakes of well, if you're not doing that, how do you ever improve your process? And they turned around, and of course, then they invested in motorcycle racing, and they became dominant on the racetrack. And you can look at the whole journey from a brand and a positioning perspective, but it still went all the way back to having a reliable engine. And how could they do that in a facility with a bunch of humans moving engines physically from one station to the next? It made me think of that at such a simple level. And that was 2017. That was, for forever ago in terms of automation and technology.
Yes. And, to your story, the pain was great enough.
Yes.
Right? The pain of being known as not a reliable motor. Now there's other options out there. Was great enough to say, we're going to fix this. We're going to make it better. And I think that goes back to your question about Canada is how much pain do we have to be in before we really wake up and say, let's get it done.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good mic drop moment, Hugo. Very well done. And what I loved about it is it was a key part of the tour because they were so proud of it culturally that they did it. Yeah. And they showed it, and they showed the whole tour was interesting, but it's the one thing I always remember was them explaining the code on the ratchet before you even hit the bolt on the connecting rod or whatever the situation was. And that's the one thing I remember out of the whole tour. But when the pain was big enough for them as an organization, as an iconic brand that still was known for being unreliable. It's a testament to being so sexy and such a beautiful motorcycle that people still bought them, even though they were unreliable. And there's some Ducati owners that are rolling their eyes at me right now. I understand that, but I think everybody kind of knows that story.
Yeah,
So for me,
it's a good thing they're good looking because
yeah,
man.
they were very good looking motorcycles. If you were to wave your magic wand from your role, Hugo's perspective, but also the role you play at Schneider and the companies you talk to, and you were to wave that magic wand in Canada, that would make the difference in not 3 months, but in 3 to 5 years. Like, these are longer term horizon things we want to get better at. Is there a few things that you would do with the magic wand in terms of take more risk, implement more technology? What would you do with your magic wand in this case, Hugo, from a Canada perspective?
Well, it's a magic wand, so I'll go bold. So first of all, I mean, I wish that every single SME, small to medium company out there, has the ability to implement technology in a way that's successful, right? And that's magic, right? Because that means that you have culture, you have people that can endorse it, you have financial means to invest and see a return on investment. But that would be number one, because that layer is huge. Like, we always think about the big companies, but the reality is, if you got that critical mass moving with that adoption of technology, we're gonna wake up not in a day, but in 5 years, Canada is like a whole new country in terms of that would be my first thing. Second one, I really would hope that we have a diversified customer base, right? So what I mean by that is our OEM, right? Our manufacturers export at least 70% of their goods to 90% of their goods goes to the US, right? Which is great. But I would really want to see I would want to see made in Canada everywhere in the world, right? With products we export. That would be my second wish and magic move.
Do you have a third? Because these are great, Hugo. I feel you're really taking the full advantage of the magic wand question.
And lastly,
those were fabulous. I'm pushing you for a third just for fun.
Yeah. So the last one I would ask, right, and I would use is, I would really like to have a cobot in my kitchen.
Lovely. You and me both. Okay, I love that. It was great.
I'll send a picture of my stew, my Guinness beef stew, cut and prepared by my cobot.
I love it. And this cold weather, that sounds like you come home and your cobot has already made you a Guinness beef stew. That would be fabulous, actually.
And it will be directly connected to my thermostat, so I can also make sure it's optimizing the temperature of the kitchen while we're making it. Like I tell you, everything would be integrated.
Yes, I think that is a very I think that's an exciting version of the Jetsons we can all get behind, for those of us that are old enough to remember that show.
Yes, I mean, that's the thing. One day we're gonna wake up and we're gonna look around, being, oh my god, like, what's happening? And then it'll be like the other countries buzzing around in their spaceship and their Jetson flying cars, and we'll be like, man, how come we're not there yet, right?
How come we got left behind? Where's the flying cars and where's the hoverboards, Hugo? Where are the hoverboards? Hugo, if someone wants to learn, obviously Schneider Electric, you guys have a big website with lots of information on there. If someone is curious, wants to learn more, are they available? Can they reach out to you on LinkedIn, or do you have a preferred, or I'm assuming there's lots of ways to get a hold of you, but do you have a preference?
LinkedIn for sure. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I see all the messages, and I'm pretty responsive. So that's the best way. If not, you can always, I'll ping you and you can call me.
Absolutely. We live in the world of connectivity. If there's a motivation to get connected, you can usually get a hold of somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
Hugo, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for being willing to go down a little bit of the philosophical road, because the human side of this, I think, is like arguably the technology's there. How do we now, as humans, as business owners, as just individuals, stay in tune, stay open, and stay curious about the world around us? And I think that I heard loud and clear is a big aspect of everything you shared.
Absolutely. With a pleasure.
Thank you, Hugo. That was a lovely conversation.
All right. Thanks.